rebuild or the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side. Not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball. But we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or Guarantee, so the whole league that we hear now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Knife.
Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels pregame show. I'm Mitchell Kaminski. And if you're like me and you woke up this morning and you saw the news once again, we actually saw it last night when the story broke, but you woke up and you have a new manager, White Sox fans, Will Venable, reportedly going to be named the White Sox next manager. Scott Merkin, MLB.com, first to report that. Pretty plugged into the team, so it's safe to say that he is going to be, in fact, the team's 44th manager in franchise history. Now, I like to focus on the positives as a White Sox fan. It's no secret they have not given us much to cheer about, if anything to cheer about, the last couple of seasons. We're coming off a pair of 100-loss seasons, but this finally feels like something to be excited about as a White Sox fan. There is finally, for the first time, I think, in this 2024 season, feels like positive momentum going forward. Because, look, it's no secret. One manager is not going to fix all of the White Sox problems. All right, it's not going to mask all the warts that this organization has. There are a lot of them. And obviously, manager can only do so much. The players on the field are ultimately going to decide how many games this team wins or loses. Now, that said, it's still okay to be excited about the fact that they are putting the foundation in place that looks like to fix this thing. They addressed one of the issues from last season, which appeared to be the manager. And that's been an issue for the last couple of years. So I'm going to talk about why I think Will Venable, is a really good hire for the White Sox, expectations for him in year one, and then what this hire says about Chris Getz as a general manager. Because, he's gotten a lot of criticism from White Sox fans, and deservedly so. This hire feels different, though, from previous White Sox hires. This is the first time in the last 5 managers or so that they have gotten a guy that not only is from outside of the organization. Now, Pedro Grifol was also outside the organization. So that kind of bucked this trend they've had of hiring guys that have prior connections to the White Sox. They love hiring people they are familiar with. In fact, out of their last 5 managerial hires, until Pedro Grifol, until Rick Hahn had hired Pedro Grifol, the last time the White Sox had a manager that they hired, they had no previous connections to the organization, was Jerry Manuel back in 1990, Charlie Manuel back in 1998. That's the last time they had a guy with no ties to the organization until Pedro Grifol. Now, unlike Pedro Grifol, Venable was sought after from other teams. This is the first manager in the last couple of managerial hires they've had that there was genuine interest from other teams around the league. Pedro Grifol, you never really heard much during that search of other teams interviewing and talking to Pedro Grifol. There wasn't a big market for Pedro Grifol. Now, I should put a disclaimer out before I get into praising Will Venable in this hire. When the White Sox did hire Pedro Grifol, I understood the hire. When they were saying the reasoning for it, it seemed like a positive. So I was excited about that one too. Not nearly as excited as this one, but I did think it was a smart hire at the time. So I am going to preface all this with that because we did see how Pedro turned out. This is why I think it's different. Pedro, like I said, not a huge market for him. Tony La Russa, obviously, was on nobody's radar. No other team was interested in him. Unlike AJ Hinch, who was getting interviewed by a couple different teams because he was a good candidate. Good candidates usually have a couple different offers to choose from. They get to pick where they want to go. Where it seemed like Pedro, he'd gotten that job. That was one of the few offers he'd gotten. So he took that job. Venable had his choice of where to go. He had a lot of different options. Even if you go back even after Tony. Robin Ventura, the White Sox had to talk into managing the team. There was no interest with him either. So you keep going back. Rick Renteria, promoted from within as the bench coach. Didn't think there was a high market for him. So this is the first time they've gotten a guy that other teams wanted, which is really important when you're trying to make, because if other teams want him, it means he's probably a good candidate. The Mets. He turned down an opportunity to interview the Mets when they were there in their when the Rangers were in their postseason run. The Rangers wanted him to kind of be the heir apparent to Bruce Bochy. That was the plan. Is hey, a lot of people thought he was going to stay in Texas to just take over that role because he's the associate. He was the associate manager for the Texas Rangers. take over that role for Bruce Bochy. I heard the Cleveland Guardians were interested in hiring Will Venable, and he was also reportedly one of the 2 finalists for the Miami Marlins job, who were the only other team that had a managerial vacancy they needed to fill this offseason. So that was a positive. It checks a lot of the boxes that Chris Getz had also set out. He said he wanted a guy in another team's uniform. Checks that box outside of the organization. Someone with no ties to the organization, the White Sox organization, checks that box as well. Now, he said managerial experience is preferred, but not like the end all be all. Doesn't have any MLB managerial experience, but I think his coaching experience makes up for that. Will Venable has been surrounded by a lot of smart baseball people during his coaching career. He's got a lot of different tools in the tool belt. And one of the reasons that White Sox fans criticize this team, and one of the reasons you have a thorough job process, why the Getz hire was so frustrating, because they didn't even bring in any outside people. Interview outside people, even if you had intended to hire Chris Getz that whole time, or any internal candidate, but you bring in other people at least to get their ideas. You see what these other teams are doing. What can we incorporate into our organizations? That's what smart front offices do. That's what smart businesses do. Yeah, get new ideas from different people. That's why that's a big reason why you have this hiring process. It seemed like the White Sox did conduct a pretty thorough search. And we'll get into that in just a second. But with Venable, with all of his experience, he's bringing in a lot of different ideas from smart, successful baseball people to this organization now. You look at his coaching experience. He got a bench. He got a gig as the bench coach for the Boston Red Sox under Alex Cora. Red Sox, historically, pretty well-run organization. They're always in the thick and contention. Alex Cora has won a World Series as a manager. He was also a special assistant for the Chicago Cubs under Theo Epstein. So there's a little bit of front office experience there. During his time in Chicago, too, on the north side of town for 2 years, I believe it was 2018, 2019, he was also the first base coach. So Theo, smart guy. Another guy that, yeah, if you're making personnel decisions, that's someone that you kind of want to watch. And so a special assistant role, that's good too. And then obviously his most recent role was as an associate manager for the Texas Rangers under Bruce Bochy. Well, a lot of White Sox fans sure they thought that the White Sox should have hired the last time they had to do one of these managerial searches. Bruce Bochy, probably a future Hall of Famer, has won a lot of World Series, and he saw how Bruce Bochy operate and helped them win that World Series in 2023. So championship experience, has been surrounded by a lot of smart people before from other organizations, and other teams wanted him. So I really like that for Venable. I also like the fact that he's a former player. Now, that's not the end-all, be-all, but I do think it helps. The guy is not he wasn't a scrub either. Like, he spent 8 seasons with San Diego. He had a pretty good MLB career. Now, he wasn't no offensive power. He was better with his glove than he was. But here's some of his numbers here. He spent 9 seasons in the MLB. 8 of those came with San Diego. He's mostly an outfielder. /249, 315, 404, 81 homers, 307 RBIs. So it wasn't like the best player out there. But I do think that kind of helps is especially near the end of his career, his last couple seasons, he was kind of bouncing through stops. He was playing 37 games with the Texas Rangers to close the 2015 season. Then he played in 12 seasons with the Dodgers the following season. That was his last in the MLB, just trying to stay in the show. So he had that struggle. And I think for a team that's when you have a player that has had that experience, grinding to stay in the league, has been in the minor leagues, trying to stay in the show, I think that is going to rub off on the type of team the White Sox are going to have last year. That's a good guy to have in place for developing players. And by all accounts, from everything that we've read from some of these MLB insiders and other players that have played under Venable, he's pretty good at developing guys. And that's something the White Sox have really been lacking. And this is a roster next year. It's not going to be much better. It's not going to be much improved. So if he can help with the development, that's going to be a big thing to watch. And by all accounts, he is very good. So I'm super excited about that. Now, we have David in the chat here. He's asking, who do you think Venable brings in for coaches? That's a good question. I'm interested to see if they retain Katz. I am actually in the minority. I don't mind Ethan Katz as a pitching coach. I think he's brought a lot to the table. But we'll see. I'm sure he'll bring in some of his guys. Very interested to see if Grady Sizemore is retained on the staff, because AJ Przinsky was coming out in foul territory saying that a lot of the people he trusts, a lot of his insiders in the White Sox organization, were convinced that Grady Sizemore was going to get this job. A lot of White Sox fans thought that way too. I know the players really liked him. He had a strong endorsement from them. So maybe they keep him on the staff just to help out. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, expectations for Venable in year 1. Again, he's not going to fix all those issues. He's not. He's not. This team's not going to magically all of a sudden be a contender just because we got Venable as the manager. A bare minimum, these are the three things I am looking for. Number one, and most importantly, holding players accountable. They got to have some accountability. If a guy makes a mistake, it needs to be addressed so they learn from that mistake and doesn't happen. Mistakes can happen, but we cannot be seeing the same stupid base running mistakes. Guys missing cutoff man, defensive lapses consistently throughout the year. Got to hold guys accountable. I thought that's something that Rick Renteria did really well. You dog it to first base, your ass is getting bent. I love that, especially for a team like this. A lot of young guys. You start setting good habits early. So hold players accountable, number one. Number two, and this is the lowest bar, it's got to be an improvement from last year. If they're going to be bringing back a lot of the same guys, it's got to be an improvement from last year. Now, I don't think there's any way it can get worse. Yeah, that was rock bottom. But I do. They got to show some sort of improvement. Finally, I just want to see like some of these players. I just want to see them playing hard every day. Like that's all I can ask for. And that's what they did under Grady that I liked. They can lose games with the expectations of this team, but are they playing hard for them? So not only are they improving, they're showing some development, but they're playing hard. You know, even though we're 10 games out of first place, which might even be a little wishful thinking considering how bad we were this year, our guys still busting their ass down the line in the dog days of August. It doesn't even have to be like Charlie hustle out of the box every play. Like, I get it. It's a grind. You can't expect these guys to be doing that. But like just showing up to the ballpark, like they give a shit. Like they want to win. That's all. Those are the only three things that I'm expecting. If all of those three things happen, I'll be so happy. Hold players accountable. We see some sort of improvement both in the win total and the player development. And number three, guys are playing hard for them. We got Southside Deech in the chat. And so AJ said he heard that Grady will be retained in some role at the organization. So that's actually positive. I hope they keep him around. I think overall, while I wouldn't have been very upset with Grady, and I thought there's a lot of good reasons you could argue that Grady would have fit this team for what they're going to be. I do think I think Venable is the better choice. I do. There's a reason these other teams, good teams, maybe not the Marlins, but, you know, the Mets now wanted him. Now, what does this hire say about Chris Getz? And I've given Chris Getz a lot of flack. And at the end of the day, it's still the most important thing he's got to do is put a winning team on the field. But we've seen a trend now where Chris Getz, for whatever reason, he hires a lot of smart guys, seemingly smart people. He hired Josh Barfield as the assistant GM. I think that was a good hire. He was well respected in the Diamondbacks organization. Brian Bannister to oversee pitching. Very well respected. I think we saw some of the fruits of that pay off from some of the pitching guys that they had this year. Bannister was a good hire. They had the Kansas City Royals assistant GM, who was there when they won a World Series in the front office playing a key role. He brings him in. Now we're bringing in Will Venable. Like he's, for whatever reason, Chris Getz, maybe it was from his connections as a player or whatnot, but it seems like he's got a pretty positive reputation around the league because he's able to get a lot of these guys to take these jobs. I don't know how he talked Venable in. The fact that this guy didn't even want to interview for the Mets job, which is still a bigger market than Chicago, a much better roster ready to win now, didn't want to go with them. Cleveland showed interest. Again, a much better organization than the White Sox at this point. Didn't want that. And then he's also got a pretty good gig in Texas. Basically, second guy. Everyone figured that, like, hey, if this job's going to be yours, you stay put. So the fact that the White Sox of all teams got him, could talk to him into coming here, fresh off the modern day record for most losses in an MLB season is astounding. Now, I do think it helps that Chicago, in my opinion, is the greatest city in the world, especially in the summer. So, like, living in Chicago, I'm sure that is a good selling point, but kudos to Chris Getz for getting this hired up. Because, like, let's be honest, a lot of White Sox fans, they saw him as a candidate and didn't think it was a very realistic. Like, you saw him, like, oh, yeah, it'd be nice. But he got it done. I think he got the right guy here. And what I loved about it was it appeared from the outside. Now, I preface it with this. There's a lot of reports about people who were ruled out of the job, but very few of guys that they were actually interviewing. So I'm saying seemingly thorough process because we heard a lot of candidates being thrown around, but like there was very few that we actually heard, like most of them were being ruled out. Oh, like, so Daniel Descalzo was ruled out of the job. But like we never heard like, oh, the White Sox are interviewing. So that can be taken with a grain of salt. Sometimes teams will leak this stuff to the press just because they want that out there to make it look like they're doing all of this stuff. But it did seem like they had a pretty thorough search going. They didn't just go with the easy answer and give it to Grady, even though that was probably the popular pick in the locker room. It appeared they did a thorough search. They got a sought-after, well-respected candidate. And, the guy's got a great resume. So kudos to Chris Getz. I had my doubts that they would fuck this up. And I wasn't going to be I didn't have strong feelings about who they're going to bring in one way or the other. Like it was Chris Getz or a Phil Nevin, even though that would have been my first choice. But I got to give credit where credit is due here. It finally feels like some sort of positive momentum. And excuse me if I'm a little overexcited because again, it is just the manager. It's not going to fix all these issues on the field. But this is the first time all season it feels like, hey, we did something right. They got it. They got it right. They got a guy that a lot of the fan base wants. So A+ for Chris Getz. I think he got the best. I think, in my opinion, that was the best candidate available. We'll see if it pans out, but on paper, got a good guy. Do not know when this will be introduced. They've been pretty hushed about a lot of this stuff, and that even just goes to the interviewing point. So maybe the fact that there hasn't been a ton of leaks about guys that have been interviewing is good on the White Sox. Maybe they're cleaning that up. Just they don't want this stuff to leak. But I mean, the Tony La Russa thing kind of came out of left field too. So they do tend to. I think they know what information they want to get out there. As far as when he's going to be introduced, I would imagine sometime this week. They might have to wait until after. I don't know if they'd have to wait till after the World Series is over or not. Usually it takes a couple of days to do, but there was a report earlier this week from the Chicago Sun-Times that they were expecting to name a manager soon. Sure enough, literally a day later, last night, it's reported going to be Phil Nevin. On his 42nd birthday, too, I might add. That was his birthday yesterday, so happy birthday to Mr. Phil Nevin. Jesus. Will Venable. Happy birthday to Will Venable, 42nd birthday to him. Now, Nevin was the other candidate on there, and I did see an interesting point from one of the CHGO guys on Twitter, why is everyone against this Phil Nevin hire? I've seen a lot of pushback from him. Is he that bad? I don't think it was that the fact that he was bad, but because he was one of the few candidates the Sox had that actually did have some managerial experience. But I think if you look at the overall resume with a team that had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, it was a little disappointing. They were well under 500 both years. So I don't see, that was kind of my issue. Just I'd rather go with someone that, give Venable a shot. So Southside Deech, the Upper Deck elitist, asks, when do you foresee this team actually contending again? My biggest issue is with the modern day playoff format, it's absolutely inexcusable to miss the playoffs 3 or more consecutive seasons in a row. I completely agree. There's no reason. It doesn't have to be this big, long rebuild. But a lot of it is if you want to be good quickly, you got to be willing to spend money. That's just what it is. Look at the final couple teams. And the Yankees, quite frankly, look completely outgunned by the Dodgers right now. And they were one of the top 4 teams in payroll. And they ripped through, the Yankees did, the Guardians and Royals. It's not these low budget teams, and even the Royals finally paid a guy over $100 million. But the bottom line is you got to be willing to invest money into good players if you want to turn things around quickly. The White Sox don't appear to be wanting to do that. I think Jerry, it's been well documented. They've already said, look, we're not spending a lot of money this offseason, so they're not going to be good next year. Jerry's all worried about his new stadium because the Governor Pritzker told him to kick rocks. Hey, taxpayers are not going to pay for your new stadium. So he's looking for funding there. He's in talks with Nashville. He's trying to get these rumors out to give me. So I don't think his head's totally focused on the right thing, which is getting a good team on the field. We're too worried about the damn stadium right now because that's the biggest issue. And about Rob Manfred came out with such an asinine quote, obviously they have the location issues. The location is not the problem. The location is not the problem. It's the product on the field. You put a good product on the field, people are going to show up. There is nothing wrong with that location. Will the 78 be cooler? Great. But no one gives a shit. I personally think it was in poor taste as this team's losing all these games. They're taking all these photos of the stupid stadium downtown at 78 that we don't even know is going to be a thing. So I don't think his head's in the right place. So to answer Deech's question, I don't think they're going to be good next year. I don't think they're going to be good the year after that. I would say I think it's going to take about 3 to 4. A lot of it's going to depend how quickly some of these young prospects develop. It's just going to be a matter of some of these guys are good. Because they see they're really good, like the Quiros comes up and he's tearing it up, and Montgomery comes up and he's tearing it up, and they say like, oh, like these are like some legitimate pieces we can build around. Then maybe they'll be more aggressive as far as like adding a couple pieces here and there to make this team at least a wild card contender. So I would say if I had to guess over under 3 years that they're ready to contend, I would guess the over. But a lot of that's going to come down to this year. Do they trade Garrett Crochet, which I probably think they will? Does Hagen Smith turn out to be the prospect they thought he was? Does Jacob Gonzalez come up and fix some of their issues at second base? They got a lot of guys in there. They're going to get some playing time next year. And it's just going to be a matter of how good do they look? How far away do they think they are? Because that's when the White Sox really, when they thought they had something with Moncada and Robert and Menace, that's when they started adding the free agents. So, but I think a lot of these prospects, unfortunately, are like kind of far off. So it's going to take at least a year or two before the event they contend. Yeah, and that also doesn't help. Yeah, to Deech's point, when you lose 121 games the first year GM, an owner's not going to want to spend all that money. But I don't think he was going to spend a ton of money regardless, because he came in that press conference and basically like tampering, and we all knew it. But after they had fired Rick Hahn, he said in that press conference, yeah, we're not going to be in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. So like he knew they were going to invest money. They, regardless of who the general manager was, like I don't think they gave him a ton of resources to work with. So, and a lot of this also too is just Chris Getz's ability to identify the right talent. Because even when it was time to spend, because Jerry, I will say, Reinsdorf, when it was time to spend some money to make that team better, he did. They were top 10 in payroll. They did spend some money when they felt they had the team there. It's just a lot of the guys they brought in, like the Yasmani Grandals of the world, didn't work out either. Just like a poor fit. Like you can argue, I think, like Liam Hendricks was like one of the few free agents that was brought in that actually panned out and lived up to the complete billing that they thought they were going to get. And then even him, he got some injuries. So that's also going to be part of it. And Getz's track record early as GM, it hasn't been great as far as identifying free agent talent. So that'll be interesting to watch too. But I do think it feels like a domino is falling to get things moving in the right direction. We got Drew in the chat too, and I think this is a fair take, and I think this is a smart take. He goes, happy the hire has been praised across the MLB, but I'm staying neutral. More to prove and show me before I get excited, and that's absolutely fair. I think the White Sox have not earned any benefit of the doubt, especially what they put us through this past season. So I do think that is a fair and smart way to look at it. There's no reason getting all amped up only to be let down, because that happens more often than not in sports. I do want to take a little bit of time to discuss last night's World Series game with that Yankees fan. I am in the minority in this. And look, he should have gotten thrown out of the ballpark. He should probably be banned. But honestly, I kind of respect the effort. Now, I'm not advocating for going out there and touching players or trying to there was borderline assault there. However, I will give that fan props where I would not give a Steve Bartman props in the world, because he was trying to affect the game. He was trying to help the team. If you're going to sit there, foul balls are coming to you. Hey, if we can prevent this guy from making an out and helping our team, we're going to do it. So in a twisted sort of way, as big of a Goomba as that guy is, I do kind of, he looks so stupid trying to pry it out, but I get it. The knee-jerk reaction was you know what? That's a good fan right there. Bartman and all these idiots. Now, the same thing would have been if it was the Yankee guy going over there and they're clearing out, being hey, don't touch it, don't touch it. That's also a fan. Invested in the game, knowing what's going on, giving a crap about what's going on the field. Where in 2003 with the Cubs, similar situation, all of these idiots, some of whom were throwing beers at Bartman a couple moments later, were reaching for the ball in that section. Okay, so that just shows no self-awareness. Now, I should expect nothing less from Cubs fans, because there's only a slim few that are legitimate baseball fans. The majority are there just take their shirts off, have a keg party in the bleachers, or they're tourists. So there's very few knowledgeable baseball fans that'd be get out of the way. So that's and that's the difference between the average Yankee fan or even a White Sox fan. Now, mind you, you're gonna make the attendance jokes, whatever. I get it, but that, if that happened to White Sox Stadium, I would expect to see the same thing. Or at least hey, White Sox guy coming, get out of the way. Guy's leaning over to the stands, I'm going to impede him a little bit. Not you go over the top, obviously what that guy did cross the line, but in a weird sort of way, I get where he was coming from. Kind of respect it. I get it's a bad take, but I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. And then Mookie Betts reacted like, dude, like what the just the whole thing. This is the whole scene was very funny. So I'll be curious too, who they build this guy, what type of people they bring in this offseason for this team. Do they go after some veterans to fill some hole? Like, are they going over vibe guys? That's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out too. There is going to be a hole at catcher, I feel like, still too. And it's going to be interesting to see if they sign another catcher, because Hero is coming up and he had a very good season last year in Double-A. He's one of the White Sox top prospects. We got him in that Lucas Giolito trade. Right now, Corey Lee seems like he's probably going to be on the team again. But Corey Lee, after his hot start to the season, really kind of regressed late in the year. Offensively, wasn't awesome. And he does have a good pop time. The defense improved exponentially. Does that make him a long-term solution at backup catcher position? No. So I'm still not convinced on him. I think he's definitely a backup catcher in this league. But even then, like how long he stays with the team. So I think you got to bring in another catcher. They have two guys with club options, Yoan Moncada and Max Stassi. I think it's very obvious, like Yoan Moncada, he's not coming back. They're not picking up that $25 million option. Stassi's a little bit more interesting, but his is $7 million for a guy that hasn't played since 2022. He missed the whole 2023 season. He had an injury early in the year and then some personal family issues, so he opted out of the rest of the season. White Sox bring him in. He was a very good defender during that 2022 season with the Angels, but again, injuries pop up, doesn't play at all this year. So, like, you're probably not paying him $7 million. So I would think they got to bring in a catcher. Definitely got to bring in some sort of right fielder. I would hope, or second baseman. Nicky Lopez, I think, is probably going to get non-tendered. He's going to be owed, I believe, around $5 million in arbitration. I want to say. I was working on something here. I can pull that up right now. He is going to be about. They think he's going to be about $5 million in arbitration. So I think he probably gets non-tendered. You're going to have to bring in someone for him. I think Matt Foster, the relief pitcher, he's probably going to get non-tendered. Justin Anderson will probably be non-tendered. Jimmy Lambert's probably going to be non-tendered. Gavin Sheets, I would imagine he's going to be owed about $3 million. He'll probably be non-tendered. I think Steven Wilson they'll probably bring back, but there's going to be some bullpen arms they're going to have to bring in as well. So that's going to be interesting. First step done. They have got their guy to lead the ship. The foundation is beginning to put in place. They got some smart people in the front office. They seemingly got the right hire done. So we're putting the structure down. Now let's build this house, baby. Bring in some guys that can help us win some ball games. Just make us a little bit more entertaining next season. I'm hoping for a team that can go out and win. God, I mean, what's a realistic expectation after this past year? Like 65 to 70 games? Is that too much to ask? And they're in a lot of games. I think that's a realistic expectation. Just give me at least like anywhere between like the 65 to 70. Obviously you want over 70, but like at a bare minimum, at least 65 wins next year. I can't believe we're saying that. It's so sad as a White Sox fan. This is the state of things right now. We're hoping for 65 wins next year. But happy for Will Venable. Congratulations to him. Happy belated birthday as well. Welcome to Chicago. I'm excited to hear his opening press conference. That'll be interesting to see. Now, Pedro won the opening press conference too. So we'll see what he has to say if there's any change of pace. But word on the street is good at developing players. Got a lot of guys there. I think that's ultimately going to determine how much progress they make in developing these guys, how good this team is moving forward, and how quickly they want to turn this thing into a contender. The next domino to fall is going to be Garrett Crochet. Seeing how they handle that. Looks like he's probably going to be traded. I imagine he's going to be traded. I've already stated I don't think he should. I think the White Sox should hang on to him. But if the White Sox do trade him, what do we get in return for him? We saw how long that Dylan Cease trade saga was. All these teams in. Getz reportedly had an high asking price. Seemed like he got a pretty good return. But can he do it again here? Can we get a good return here? Because I don't think we got a good return for Eric Fettig at all. So small sample size, pretty mixed results. And the jury's still out in the Cease deal too, because we've only seen Thorpe in the MLB level. And he got hurt. There's a little up and down there. I'm confident in Thorpe, but not sold yet. Not sold yet. That's all we have for you. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Pinwheels pregame show will be back next Wednesday at noon. Have a good one.